So thank you very much. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for the invitation to present and speak with you today about Microbix Biosystems. Microbix is listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange and our ticker symbol is MBX on Toronto. And we have a bit of a different business model from some of the companies that David was talking about. We are pleased to be on the coverage list of David and Jaresh with a target price that's suggestive of 122% return over the next 12 months, so not too bad. And we're growing our business principally in the medical diagnostics space, supporting, not competing with, but supporting and enabling major multinational companies to bring these new innovations to market that enable better health care for all of us. And I'll justify some of those statements. And our model is very much what I've described here on this introductory slide, which is profitable growth from supporting next generation medical diagnostic tests. Of course, public looking, we have a forward-looking statement. I'll keep it brief on that, and I'll read every line very slowly to torment all of you. Capital structure, we're about a 50 million market cap presently. So, if you look at our trailing financials, that's about two times sales currently, about 8 times EBITDA, maybe 1.8 times book value. So quite conservatively valued. We have a very strong balance sheet that I'll go into later, including a very strong cash and credit availability position, and we generate net free cash flow, and we're buying back and canceling shares, not issuing them. So we're in a net anti-dilutive position for our company and growing it on that basis. Got a great senior management team and board of directors. We have altogether about 130 employees at our company across 3 adjacent sites in Mississauga, Ontario. And I just get to present all the great work that my teammates are doing, and similarly we have a very well-qualified board of directors that provides independent oversight of what we're doing. So you have the level of management controls that you want to see in a public company to which you're entrusting some of your capital. So, who do we deal with? Well, we make products and sell them to a whole range of major international companies. And you'll see on this slide some of the very largest in the world who are direct customers of Microbix. Companies like Abbott, companies like Becton Dickinson, Copan, the makers of the ubiquitous swabs that everybody was getting COVID tests from, are a strategic partner of ours. Companies like QuidelOrtho, Diasorin, Meridian Biosciences, all of these leaders in the field buy stuff from us, goods and services from Microbix. And those come in some interesting categories. We make critical ingredients that enable those firms to manufacture their diagnostic tests. We make medical devices that enable people to check whether those tests are actually working. And we also have a fully funded drug program where we're bringing back a very clinically important drug to the US market initially and then globally after that. But that will not cost us a penny because that is fully partnered with a large international private equity firm, and we will be getting the benefit of that commercialization in a few years' time in a fat royalty stream and milestone payments coming in. I'll talk a little bit about our positioning. Some of our product categories are ingredients, our test controls, reagents. They really sit at this interesting junction point, a choke point, if you will, between our customers on the left, some of the agencies that check the proficiency and provide the accreditation of clinical labs like Dynacare and Life Labs, LabCorp, Quest, etc., makers of diagnostic tests, and the clinical labs that use them. And our markets range from esoteric tests that are more used in research labs through to the fully registered FDA-approved medical tests and the point-of-care tests that you started to see more of during COVID, where a little benchtop toaster-sized instrument can provide a quality of result that is similar to what a big clinical lab in a hospital could do and wasn't possible outside of that setting until very recently. And we're really at that juncture between that. So our products, particularly our quality assessment products or test controls that I'll speak about, are really needed for the regulatory and commercial acceptance of new assays in a lot of different instances. And this gives some immense market opportunities for us. And I'll talk a little bit about what exactly I mean by that. So in terms of our quality assessment products, if you get a medical test, you go in, you say, you know what, gosh, my lungs are congested, I feel terrible, what have I got? Well, if a doctor examines you and then they run a medical test and maybe they check you for flu and they check you for COVID and they check you for RSV and they check you for some pneumonia, and let's say you come up positive for one or you don't. Well, how do you know that that test actually worked? Do you have a PhD? Maybe Dave does, but not everybody in this room does. And not everybody has, postgraduate training in laboratory medicine to know whether is the instrument working? Is the technician running it properly or administering the test? Has the sample been handled properly? Are the reagents or consumables spoiled or working properly or left in the trunk of somebody's car on a day like this and they're fried out? Well, what we do is we create perfect mimics of patient samples so those tests can be challenged at regular intervals to make sure they work. Because the consequences of, for example, a false negative where you don't get treated properly for a condition you do have, or a false positive where you have an unnecessary treatment and perhaps that treatment has some very real side effects, these are not trivial consequences. So our products are all about making sure the tests work. And what we'll do when we put, for example, a control on a Copan flocked swab, we'll pay under 20 cents for that nasal swab that goes up your nose. But when we're done with it and it's a positive test control that can validate the function of a PCR test, for example, we can sell that for on the order of $20. So you can imagine the margin based on our expertise of going from a product that sells for cents, tens of cents, to a product that sells for tens of dollars. That's where we gain our benefits. And there's all sorts of technical advantages, whether it's performance, formats, stability. You don't want something that breaks down. You don't want something that's infectious. And we're supporting all sorts of next generation diagnostic tests that are reaching the market now and in the near future. And I'll give just a few examples. Many people are familiar with screening for cervical cancer, for example, and the PAP test. Looking at dating from the 1950s, this is where pathologists look at cells from a woman's cervix and analyze those cells and say, have they been transformed into cancer or near cancer by a virus called human papillomavirus that we know does that. That's the cause of those cancers. Well, for decades, people have asked, well, why do we wait for a cancer to appear when we could be looking 5 to 10 years earlier and identifying those people who are carrying a high-risk variant of this ubiquitous virus? We've all been exposed to it. We all probably have carried it in our body at one time or the other. It's a family over 100 viruses, virus subtypes, of which a dozen or more directly cause cancer. Well, why wait for the cancer? Why not check for the virus? Well, those tests quite simply couldn't be validated that they worked without known positive controls, and no one had figured out how to make them. We did. We have. So companies, major international firms like Abbott, Becton Dickinson, and Roche are absolutely thrilled about this because now they can commercialize the tests that will work much better and much more reliably than the old Pap testing as frontline screening for surgical cancer, and the governments will approve those tests and the payers will reimburse for them. Now, we don't make the tests. What we do is we make sure the tests work, and we get a few percentage points of that massive market potential, but we don't care whether Abbott wins a particular contract, whether it's Roche, Hologic, Becton Dickinson. For example, Republic of Ireland has selected the Roche system. We're supporting them. The Netherlands has selected Becton Dickinson. We're supporting them. Roche has been selected in Quebec. We're going to be supporting the quality objectives there as well. So all this work that we're doing generates annuity-style revenues for us. And similarly on the point-of-care instruments, these little toaster-sized instruments that can do complex PCR reactions, we're supporting those instruments. So somebody walks into a clinic and says, it hurts to pee, rather than, trying to chase that patient for follow-up and maybe a result weeks later, these tests can say, go get a coffee, we'll take a sample, now go get a coffee, by the time you're done, we'll have a result for you and know how to treat you. And we're supporting the quality systems on those tests as well with different products. Do a lot in medical device and sample collection. I won't dwell on those. We'll touch on some of our other business and where we started. We actually started as a company that was supporting the public health labs, and then we started getting asked to do the culturing and grow up these different organisms, purify them, and inactivate them, and then they become the ingredients for certain kinds of tests, particularly those that are looking for the Y-shaped antibodies in your blood to assess whether you've been exposed to an infection or have enough immunity to resist it. These tests, a whole slew of global multinational companies rely on us for the ingredients for their tests. So it's a little bit like your car, whether it's a Ford or a Ferrari. You're looking at the badge on the hood. You're not asking who made the transmission. We're the ones that make the transmission, but you don't see our name on the hood of it, on the hood of the instruments or those tests. So we've been growing the business quite dramatically over the past few years. We have been upgrading infrastructure, fixing balance sheet. We're now doing about reliably over $5 million in revenues a quarter. That's about our break-even point. And beyond that, we drop about 50 cents of every incremental dollar to the bottom line. And it's been quite an adventure over the past few years with the pandemic. I can tell you that has changed a lot of things back and forth. I'll also mention, just in the time that we have, our drug asset. And because we have this tremendous biological expertise within the company, we identified an opportunity years ago to make what's called a biosimilar of a biologic drug, and embarked on that adventure. But ultimately, we ended up acquiring rights to the original version of the drug, but we have all the expertise to make it, but no facility to do that. And the drug business is very expensive. It can cost tens and hundreds of millions to field a drug, as Dave was showing on some of those companies. They're just getting it to proof of concept in many cases, never mind commercializing. We said, small market cap company, we can't swing that big a bat. We can't spend such vast quantities of money, so let's partner it. And we found the partners who are amongst the most sophisticated private equity life science companies in the world that said, you know what you've got, it all checks out. We're going to spend $50 million to bring your drug back to market. And in turn, we're supporting that at no cost to us. They're paying all the bills, and we'll get royalties and fat royalties and milestones starting in about 3 years' time, which is a really great supercharger on the engine we already have on our business growth. So you can go into this follow-up, I won't dwell on it. The category of drug is what's called a clot buster or a thrombolytic. So this is a drug that safely dissolves blood clots, and that could be in catheters that are used to administer medicine or do dialysis, and it can be for systemic clots, particularly pulmonary embolisms, which is very increasingly common now post-COVID, and this is a drug that actually is already approved for those two indications. So a little bit, we've got closer to 130 staff now across 3 adjacent sites in Mississauga, and we actually make stuff. And there's nothing that gives you good discipline in your business than actually having to make a product for your customer and deliver it and make a profit every time you do that. So we've got a tremendous amount of operational expertise, and we've done massive infrastructure upgrades and paid for it all along the way. So we can go in and talk to major multinationals, win business from them, and not be laughed out of the room as a critical sole source supplier to these industry giants. We're developing products at a hell of a clip. I've got to update this slide, but you know, we are making tremendous innovations and waves within our industry and winning these big companies as direct customers for us. And you start to see it in our numbers. You know, we were growing the business and getting poised to launch a bunch of products in 2019 when the pandemic broke, and the very breadth of our portfolio hurt us. We then adapted quickly to that with relevant products in 2021 and 2022 for the pandemic, and then we had to successfully pivot back out to more normal conditions in 2023. 2024 numbers will be close to 25 million in revenues, which is an all-time record for us. Organic growth in our ongoing product sales of about 33% year over year, and that's the kind of growth rate we're looking to sustain. We're also improving our margins, generating strong EBITDA, free cash flow, and making sure we have a very strong balance sheet. We've got a current ratio of about 6.6 and a debt to equity of around 0.4 currently. And as I said earlier, we're buying back shares, not issuing them. So, you know, how do we grow? We're pushing for sales of 100 million or more over the next few years before counting for any of the royalties on our drug. And that's, you know, a combination of cross-selling, selling more products to our existing customers, adding large new customers, adding product classes, technical innovations, supporting a whole range of next generation diagnostic innovations that enable better healthcare for all of us. So, you know, where we are, I would represent and can defend that we've become a go-to partner for all the international companies developing these next generation tests, and are really looking by that to build real value for our shareholders with growth in sales, growth in earnings, and ultimately recognition of that in the price of our shares. So with that, I'll end the presentation, and si tu as des questions en anglais ou français, ça fait un plaisir de répondre. Yes?
Je vais faire passer ton français. Je voudrais savoir, de 2020, on voit que les gross margins, le EBITDA, c'est quand même le plus bas. Pourquoi, malgré la pandémie, ça a été plus bas que les autres?
Les marges brutes, on a il y a un nombre de produits qui ont des marges brutes plus hauts et quelques qui sont plus bas. La plupart du temps, les nouveaux produits, on fait des lancements avec des marges brutes à peu près 70-10% ou supérieurs, mais on a des produits qui ont plus vieux, que tu peux avoir des marges à 40 à 50%. Alors, ça dépend trimestre à trimestre exactement le marge on va réaliser à un moment donné.
En 2021, on va se augmenter, donc j'imagine que la prochaine pandémie, ça peut être réduire encore, vous allez augmenter en 2020.
Oui, on a fait de la production des produits pour la collection des échantillons pour le COVID, pour le gouvernement d'Ontario, qu'on a fait à peu près 5 millions de dollars de revenus de ce genre à 2021 et 2022. Puis après la pandémie, le gouvernement a recommencé de faire l'importation de 100% de ces produits avec leurs amis. Et on n'était pas une vraie amie du gouvernement de ce degré qu'on était impliqué à ça. Mais on a remplacé maintenant cette année, en 2024, tous les revenus et plus que ça. Oui, en arrière.
How sensitive are your partners to any recession? And do you feel any slowdown lately in the business?
No. Everybody speaks, I won't bother translating, everybody speaks French and English. The question, just so everybody heard it, was are we seeing any sense of a recession? Do we see a vulnerability to a recession? And are we seeing any slowdown in our business? We certainly saw, going into the pandemic, doctors were afraid to see patients and patients were afraid to see doctors. And going into the pandemic, the very breadth of our portfolio hurt us because nothing but COVID was happening, and then that persisted through the pandemic, and then we had to adapt for more normalized conditions coming out of it in late 23, 24. Now we're seeing tremendous growth in both sides of our business, the ingredient side and the test controls medical devices side, and no, we see no evidence of a slowdown. So we're not a consumer discretionary good. I'm sure if we were in that business, we'd see some whispers of that, but certainly not with any of our clients in the medical necessity field. Yes, sir.
What's the biggest challenge in the business? What's the biggest challenge you have?
I would say some of the challenges are working with our clients' timelines. We're very reliable in delivering on our customers, but sometimes they're not as reliable delivering. So for example, we've been working with probably the 5th largest diagnostics company in the world, Quidel Ortho, in supporting all of the assays in a pivotal new instrument platform for them. They're about 2 years late on commercializing that instrument platform. We were ready on time, they're not. And it's those kind of delays in a highly regulated industry that can bite you because you're trying to manage expectations as good managers with investors. And if we're doing the best we can with the visibility from our clients, but they mess it up, that flows down to us. But we're getting away from that by increasing the number of clients that we're working with and the number of projects we're working on. So that vulnerability, I think, is coming down over time.
And what's the end goal?
Well, ideally, in about 3 years' time, we'll have our organic revenues closer to 100 million than the 25 run rate we're, pretty close to now, and we'll be hitting full stride with our drug asset. So at that point, I think we could see 15 to 25 US a year in royalties from our drug asset, and then maybe as much profit stream again from our base business. And certainly, if we're not going to trade at 1 times earnings at that point. So there's a lot of upside there. The big question is in capital markets, small caps are relatively unloved right now. And does a peer or a competitor come in before that time and say, love the trajectory you're on, here's a change of control premium, you're done. And well, that might be nice. Maybe we get 100% premium. I'd much rather see the stock up 10-fold in 3 years than 1-fold in 1 year. But we'll see, we'll see where we get to.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Is there any M&A in the picture?
We have a giant bullseye in the back of, I might as well stencil it in the side of my head. But yes, there's a lot of companies interested in us, and my standard response is we're not entrenched managers trying to do this for lifestyle. If you bring a reasonable change of control premium for shareholders, we'll have a conversation. And some of those conversations are being had. There's nothing disclosable at this point, certainly. And we continue to build the business. We don't need money. We're not burning cash. So we're going to be building as fast and best as we can until and unless value either gets recognized by the market or by a strategic partner.